Hey guys, what the heck is going on? Sam Cox here with Team Bropire, and coming to you guys today with a deck profile for GOAT format. Today I'm going to be showcasing my version of a reasoning gate deck. There's a lot of different names that these types of decks fall under in GOAT format. Some people like to call them reasoning gate. Some people call them like a crane gate deck or a mill deck or a turbo deck, OTK deck, whatever. You could throw turbo like on the end of any of that, and people would probably know like what you're talking about. They all kind of fall in the same genre of decks in GOAT format. This is a deck I like to call lessismore.dek, and I'll elaborate more on that here in a little bit. It's a very fun deck. It's probably the main deck that I've been playing over the last year and a half or so as far as GOAT format goes. It's very competitive, and it's to the point now to where it can pretty much hold its own against just about anything. There's not any decks that just completely shut it down. There's certain cards that are very good against this deck, but we'll get more into that here in a little bit. If you're looking for a new deck to play, especially something that's very fast, something like a Reasoning Gate Turbo deck, highly recommend this one. I've been playing a lot with friends at locals, competitive, a lot on Rated DB, and it's been really good with this deck. It's an awesome, fun deck, and highly recommend it to anybody trying to get into something like this. It definitely wins way more than it loses. I will say that about this deck, especially if you know how to pilot it. So anyway, make sure you guys subscribe. I'd appreciate it very much. My band's music is down below as well. Make sure you go check that out. It's free. Go stream it wherever you listen to music. And let's get in the deck. So it's called lessismore.dek. And the reason that it's called less is more is because we only play 4 monsters in this deck. And I wanted to build a deck for the longest time that was a Reasoning Gate deck. But I wanted to kind of minimize what could be the luck factor that some of these Reasoning Gate turbo decks have, because some play like 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 monsters. I wanted to build something that kind of minimized on all that. This plays 4, and the reason that we're playing 4 monsters is the fact that these 4 kind of do what your spells do in the deck. They're just the monster version of it, and you can attack with it. They add cards from your graveyard to your hand, they add cards from your deck to your hand, and they shut off your opponent's back row, and they're all usually big enough to attack over your opponent's monsters. They're all also 8,400, so if you get all 4 of these to the field, then 8,400 damage, attack, you win. I mean, your opponent has 8,000. We don't play Upstart. A little spoiler. So that one card would kind of ruin the whole entire strategy of it, though. But your goal with the deck is to get all these out of the deck into circulation, and then if you can do that, get them to the field, attack, or a few other alternatives that I'll mention here in a little bit. But yeah, that's kind of the whole point of this deck, is just to go very fast and OTK your opponent. This deck is probably the only deck that I ever built that actually goes second in GOAT, which is kind of weird, but that's just the way that this deck plays. So anyway, yeah, let's get into the spells. The way that we can get these into circulation starting off is Reasoning, and obviously Reasoning is a great card because it can be a +1. If your opponent guesses it wrong and you end up summoning something like Crane or Demok, most of the time I would say they're not going to guess it right, because you're automatically shutting off numbers 2, 5, and 7 because we're only playing 4, 6, and 8. And even at that, they only have like a 1 in 3 chance. I mean, we play 2 Crane, so like the math is maybe off just a little bit right there. It kind of makes it to where you can usually get a plus off of this card, which makes it really good. The thing with Reasoning in this deck is, once you activate a card like Reasoning, the fact that we play so few monsters and we play almost 3 of every single other spell except for the 1-ofs, once you activate 1 copy of Reasoning, there's so much mill happening mathematically usually between monsters that you have everything that you need in your grave after 1 mill that you need to grab back with something like Demok or Spell Reproduction or whatever. So yeah, Reasoning is great in this deck, obviously. Another really good card in this deck to help get things going is Monster Gate. Monster Gate's really good to activate on things like Crane or to activate on Demok, just to kind of keep the cycle going through the deck. Relatively does the same thing that Reasoning does, except for your opponent can't get, well, I guess they can guess if they want, but it doesn't mean if they get it right, it still hits the field. Yeah, so these cards are really awesome. Monster Gate combos really, really, really well with Scapegoat. Scapegoat's a offensive, defensive combo card and a stall card all in one. It's a really, really, really great card. This ends up being something that we just pitch off a Spell Reproduction if we end up going second. If we don't have game, then something that I usually set. Scapegoat combos well, like I said, with Monster Gate. Scapegoat also combos well with Metamorphosis. There will be times where you have Scapegoat with a Metamorphosis or a Monster Gate, and you're kind of at this crossroads where you're trying to figure out, do I need to stall for another turn, or do I need to try to go for game? Sometimes this deck will hold out for a turn or two until you have enough cards in your hand to go for game, and you just kind of pull the trigger and take your life points. So yeah, Scapegoat's a really good card. It's very versatile in this deck. Like I said, something that we either set or you pitch off spell reproduction, and that's kind of, you know, why we have it in here. So next we play, well, I guess the other 2 copies of Metamorphosis, but 3 copies of Metamorphosis. This card's really good, not only with Scapegoat, but this card can kind of substitute in a way. Like, let's say you end up activating meta on your Demock. Then we end up summoning something like Gatling Dragon. Okay, so, and then say we end up bringing the Demock back with Dimension Fusion. This kind of makes it to where you don't have to have Jinzo on the field. You can just get the other 2 Cranes and then win. Meta makes it to where it can substitute as one of these monsters. It's kind of the same concept as like with Crane. Say we activate meta on Crane and then send it to the grave, somehow bring it back. Darkfire Dragon can substitute for the other Crane. Now we play Darkfire Dragon, we play Ryu Senshi, we play Gatling Dragon. If you summon any of these fusions instead of the other monster in the deck, like Ryu instead of Jinzo, Darkfire instead of Crane, this instead of this, etc., it'll still be game because there's a 400 life point gap, or I guess you have like that much spare because these are all 8,400. The monsters are together. So if you have one of these, none of the fusions are more than 400 less than the main deck monster, if that makes any sense. So it kind of makes it to where you can still get game, to where you don't have to get all 4 monsters out of the deck. So yeah, Metamorphosis is good in that way. And then next we play 3 copies of Dimension Fusion as well as 3 copies of Soul Release. Dimension Fusion is really good because obviously you can just bring back all your banished stuff. Beware of what your opponent might have banished. That can kind of bite you sometimes. Soul Release is kind of like Scapegoat in the way that it's like an offensive, defensive, a combo card, and a stall card all at the same time. This is really good against just like random rogue decks and sometimes chaos decks. If you banish stuff that they can't bring back, like if they milled their own BLS or own Chaos Sork, or if you banish their Thousand Eyes Restrict, I mean, they can't bring that kind of stuff back. So that's really good. I usually just banish all the spells and traps out of their grave, also because, you know, they can't summon those off of Dimension Fusion. So really good combo right here with these 2, because let's say worst case scenario, absolute worst case scenario, you activate 3 reasonings and then they call all of them right, which has actually happened before and it sucked. Then you can activate Soul Release and then bring them all back. So it kind of makes it to where it doesn't matter so much that they're not absolutely on the field, because you can just kind of banish them and then bring them back. So it's a really, really good combo, and I love the fact that we can play 3 Soul Release in this deck because, like I said, it combos well with not only this, but just can really kind of stall out your opponent on like what they're able to do. Next, we have the Clear Your Opponent's Board package, and this includes 1 Lightning Vortex, 3 Brain Control, 3 Mind Control, 3 True Nade, and 1 copy of Heavy Storm. So like I said, the cards in the main deck kind of do what these do. Jinzo is kind of your 5th copy of spell and trap removal. 3 Mind Control, 3 Brain Control. I used to not max out on both, but then I just decided to play 3 of each, because no matter what your opponent had on board, you could just clear it, whether it was Brain Control or Mind Control. I will say that if your opponent has a monster that is 1,200 or more attack, and you get like a Crane, a Jinzo, and a Demock on the field, then you can steal that monster, and that'll be the other 1,200, because I believe that Crane, Jinzo, and Demock are 6,800 altogether. If you can steal something at least 12, then that's still game. Mind Control just allows you to steal whatever, no matter if it's face up or face down. These clear the back row. Lightning Vortex is if they have multiples, or it lets you play through Scapegoat. Yeah, not trying to do anything super fancy right here. We're just maxing out on all of them. If you have enough damage on board and you summon Demock to the field, if you have enough damage on board, including Demock, like whenever you get Demock to the field, or if you can activate spell reproduction, just grab whatever you need out of the grave, out of any of this, and you can just clear the rest of the board and just kind of go for game. Then for the one-ofs, we play 1 copy of Pot of Greed, 1 Charity, 1 Premature, and 1 Snatch Steal. Yeah, they're all just power spells in this deck, man. These are the 2 that I activate first, if I draw them first, just to kind of see what I can get. Once you discard something off Charity, your opponent's going to know kind of what you're playing usually. Premature is kind of a power spell in this deck. It just kind of can summon back Crane. You can combo that with Heavy True Nade sometimes. Usually won't summon back Demok just due to Demok's effect, unless they end up calling it right off of reasoning. There's been times where I like that reasoning, have premature, and they call 8, goes to the grave, and then I just bring it back anyway. Snatch Steal is really good because you can steal your opponent's monster and you either activate meta, Monster Gate. You can tribute their monster for like your Genzo in hand. There's a lot of different combos that you can do with this. Snatch Steal is also kind of like your 4th copy of Brain Control in that way. And then we play 3 copies of Spell Reproduction. This just kind of fetches whatever you need out of your main deck. Out of your graveyard to just finish the combo to kind of go for game. There's a lot of times where I have all the monsters in the grave, but I have Dimension Fusion, and I need to get Soul Release, so I go grab the Soul Release. There's times where I have 4 monsters on board, but they have like 2 back row, so I'll pitch 2 and grab like a Heavy Storm. This really just kind of finishes out getting whatever you need for your combo just to kind of go for a game. It's a really good card. Played at 3. And, I love this card very much in this deck. Onto the side deck. We don't side a ton in this deck, but when we do, it's definitely needed. We play 3 copies of Double Spell. This is kind of a fun tech that I like to play in this deck. If you're playing in the mirror, you're going second. You want to go second anyway. So if you side in 3 of these, say your opponent activates like a Reasoning or a Monster Gate first turn, or really they just activate any power spell, then on your turn, just activate Double Spell and take advantage of that. It's a really fun card in the mirror. Then we play 3 copies of Book of Moon. Book of Moon makes it to where you can book things like, I would say the biggest problematic stuff is things like Balter, Jowgen, Banisher of the Light, things like that are just kind of weird, kind of mess with your gameplay. There's other problematic stuff that doesn't really come to mind at the moment, but those are the main ones. Book of Moon's a really good card in this deck, and it's a spell, so it kind of just goes with the rest of the deck for spell reproduction and Demok, etc. Then we play 1 Space and 3 Dust Tornado. The Dust Tornadoes are pretty much like more copies of this. They're just not as good because they're not spells, so again, they don't combo with things like Demok and spell reproduction. But these are all in here for things like that are really problematic, like things like Necro Valley and other floodgates and that kind of stuff. If you're playing against Burn, definitely I just side these in. Even though they're traps, it's just worth kind of windling down your opponent and kind of simplifying the game state, and then just going for game when you can. 1 Call the Haunted. This is kind of weird. I play this card for problematic stuff, but the main thing that I played against is whenever my opponent is playing Spell Canceller, because Spell Canceller will absolutely shut my shit down, and I just do not want to see their Spell Canceller without something to respond to it. So I just play the 1 Call the Haunted because, it can bring back like a Genzo or Demok or something to maybe attack over theirs. Spell Canceller absolutely is almost GG every time if I don't have a response to it. So that being said, I play 3 because I know how good this card is against me. I will play it in the mirror sometimes if my opponent especially isn't guessing things like 5 with Reasoning. So that card's really, really good. Then we do play an extra deck, and again, the main ones that we do go into are Gatling Dragon, Ryu, Darkfire, and then we go into things like Thousand Eyes Restrict. Those are the main ones. We do go into other stuff if we need to, especially if we snatch our opponent's monster. We have a whole entire 3 copies of all of it, pretty much. All of the big list of goat monsters for the extra deck. I'll link it down below, actually. There's a list online. In this format, you can have an extra deck about that big. But these are the main ones that we usually go into. This is kind of another version of Genzo-ish. Gatling Dragon can help clear the field if you need it to. Sometimes it can help clear your own field if it's clogging up with scapegoats. Darkfire is just kind of a replacement for Sacred Crane, like I was talking about earlier, and then Thousand Eyes Restrict can kind of just help stall the game for a turn or 2 until you're ready to kind of pull the trigger and go for game. But anyway, guys, that is it. I appreciate you guys watching. Feel free to like, subscribe, and all that good stuff, and let me know what you think about this deck, and we will see you guys later.